We have just 8 days to go until the 2020 election, and the election is essentially a baked cake at this point in time with just days remaining. The two candidates couldn't be more different. The number of undecideds is relatively small. We know the top issues to voters are coronavirus, the economy, and the race-related protests that we've seen over the last several months, followed by healthcare and a number of other different issues. And I do think it's important just to remember that this is a unique election. The circumstances are particularly different. We're in the middle of a 100-year pandemic. We've got the most incompetent president that we've ever had, and that there are really important issues that neither candidate is talking about and that are rarely talked about in many presidential elections. But we need to remember this large swath of important issues that if Joe Biden were to win, we are going to need to get right back to shining a spotlight on. Now, the point of doing this segment is not to attack either candidate per se. It is a reminder about circumstances. This is not about who we should vote for. Obviously, for the sake of humanity and the future of the country, we must vote for Joe Biden. But all of that being said, there has been no substantive discussion about, as an example, labor unions and the democratization of the workplace. There's been no substantive discussion about tech monopolies outside of Donald Trump complaining about how Twitter and Google treat him unfairly. No discussion of the massive change to our economy that has happened and is happening, which means quite simply that a ton of those manufacturing jobs are never coming back because they don't exist. These aren't trivial things, and they go to the core of how our country has changed and potentially could change depending on who we elect. And the reason it's crucial that we talk about this is that someday the pandemic will be over. Someday, hopefully, there will be a reasonable person in the Oval Office again. Hopefully, the latter will happen in January. And we're going to need to be ready to get back to the serious work on issues that are sort of higher on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for lack of a better term. I'll get back to that idea, but let's go through the issues. Back in 2016, I talked about this, and it's happening again, which is that neither candidate will just come out and say, a lot of the manufacturing jobs are never coming back. Many of the jobs just don't exist anymore because they've been replaced by technology. Others aren't going to come back unless we change our economy so drastically that labor is as cheap here as it is in Bangladesh and China and other countries. And of course, our economy is based on the labor being cheaper there than here. So if we don't reorganize the economy and keep pretending that it's just a battle over who can bring those jobs back, we're in a fantasy world. That has to be dealt with. Neither Trump nor Hillary would say it in 2016. They would both say, I'll bring the jobs back. No, I'll bring the jobs back, because it's not politically advantageous to admit many of the jobs aren't coming back no matter who we elect. If you say it, your opponent says that's a defeatist attitude. And it's happening again this election. Until we recognize and admit that, we won't move on in terms of figuring out, okay, given that many of those jobs aren't coming back, how do we organize, structure, and supplement our economy? Biden has done a little bit of it by saying this isn't about saving jobs in a dying industry like coal. It's about creating new industries altogether, like green energy jobs. But both candidates are very lacking on that issue. Labor unions and democratizing the workplace. Neither candidate is saying a word about it other than claiming, I have the support of the unions. Joe Biden has actually been okay on this issue at times in his career. Big Amtrak guy, which is a union represented organization. But looking at the industries where workers are most vulnerable and figuring out how do we increase union representation? How do we change the fundamental dynamics of the relationships between corporations and workers to be more like the countries that don't need as strong of a union presence because they've dealt with the issues that unions are often there to deal with? Talking about employee representation on company boards, dealing with stock repurchasing, which just helps shareholders and executives. If this all sounds weird, it's because neither candidate talks about it for a combination of reasons. Trump doesn't talk about it because he doesn't support any of this stuff. Biden, again, may support some of it. His historical views on Amtrak suggest that he does, but he's not talking about it, maybe because we have a five alarm fire when it comes to coronavirus and the economy. Maybe it's because he's decided it's not to his advantage. But either way, we have to get back to that once sanity returns. And then number three, tech monopolies. Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders did talk about it. Andrew Yang talked about it with regard to our data, but we're not hearing about it from Trump nor Biden. Trump sort of will dance around it when he's mad at tech companies, which he says are far left and are being unfair to him. It's totally self-serving. It's not actually being dealt with as an issue. And Joe Biden's not really talking about it either in a prominent way. And by the way, the debate moderators haven't brought up these issues either. So we can say that there's a lot of blame to go around here. So the point is not to say that I have any doubt about who we should vote for on Tuesday or now, if you're voting now. It's obviously Joe Biden. And to some degree, we have an emergency like coronavirus. And so it's natural that some of these issues would fall back. If we go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if our basic needs of safety, security, and health aren't met, it's less likely we're going to get into tech monopolies. And I understand that. But we must remember that there are major political issues missing from the campaign right now. We can say they're missing because of coronavirus. We can say they're missing because Trump is such a dumpster fire that until he's removed, we can't deal with them. And that's fine. But we need a plan for when we get the ball back. As I've been saying, Biden winning is getting the ball back. We're not scoring points. We're just getting the opportunity to play offense again. We need to be ready to do it, particularly since there may be a 2-year window of Senate and House control, which will then be replaced by Republicans taking control back of either or both the House and Senate. So very important that we bear this in mind.